Welcome everybody to the Cheech and Kern.
Sorry,
I messed up. Ready? Ready. Hey guys, welcome everybody. Wait, no, I fucked that up.
Oh, fuck.
I'm just gonna wait. Of course, he's wrestling Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Boy, you know, he was kind of built all around. You know, he had those huge thighs. You know, they kind of went well with his whole body. That kind of sounded gay, but you know.
Just a little bit.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, WCW Flashback City. I'm your host, Cheech, alongside my main man, Kern. What up, Kern?
What's happening, Cheech? WCW Flashback City, bitch.
That's right. We're here. We're going to talk about WCW Monday Nitro. Like we mentioned on our last podcast, we mentioned we were going to go in chronological order each WCW event going forward from, and we're, of course, the first one we're going to do is WCW Monday Nitro from September 4th, 1995. This was the very first Monday Nitro. It took place in the Mall of America, and this was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. What do you remember about this first episode of before we start going on here, Kern?
Well, I remember it was in the Mall of America, which I thought was strange at the time because I don't remember anybody just going to like a mall and putting up a ring and, you know, and having a TV show. But it actually looked nice. It looked nice on TV.
Yeah,
I thought it was an interesting concept of going to the mall, but it actually worked out for him.
it looked pretty good. Yeah, it looked real good, and I mean, it was full. It was packed, filled to the gills, as I said before. You know, there was people in the escalators, in the hallways. They were in the elevators. There was everywhere that you could see. You could look at. You see people there.
Plus, they had a bunch of chairs put around the ring also for the fans to sit down. That was kind of nice also.
Yep. All right, so you ready to get in this, Karen? Now, we changed our format a little bit for the show. Those of you guys who aren't familiar listening to the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, normally what we do is we go back, we review old events, right, and we'll talk about the event. But if you guys heard us, our first two episodes, but basically what we did was we used to have the event in the background, and we would watch it and kind of react as we were watching it. So what we decided to do here for these WCW Flashback City is we're gonna do exactly that. We're gonna have the event in the background, and we're gonna kind of start reacting as we watch it, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the show. And of course, before we go on, I want to mention, if you guys have any questions, comments, and suggestions for Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast Flashback City, you guys can send us your comments at cheechandkern@gmail.com. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna hit the play button here, Kern, and I'm just gonna lay back a little bit and let the intro music play a little bit for you guys to get a feel for WCW Monday Nitro.
They always had a badass intro.
That's right. All right, and the very first episode, of course, we're welcomed in by Eric Bischoff, Steve Mongo McMichael, and Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Actually, it really looks like a really nice crowd.
Yeah, it's completely filled out. I mean, everything is just packed. It looks like a packed arena, actually. And I like the way, one of the things that WCW brought to the table on these episodes, whether, you know, I used to always like the way WCW would kind of have like that corner top shot of the whole crowd. Like they will always do that.
Opening crowd, right?
Yeah, and you always see like the crowd, the building would you know, would look just jam packed, and it's one of those great memories I have of watching WCW.
WCW was great back then. I loved WCW. I liked WCW before it was WCW, when it was the old Jim Crockett days. Those were even better. But WCW had some excitement in the 90s. I mean, great excitement. And what I loved about it is they were always live, so there was always a surprise. There was always something lurking behind the curtain that was going to surprise the shit out of everybody.
That's right. That's right. Now it's very interesting. There was this very first episode of Monday Nitro. Of course, we're welcomed in by Eric Bischoff, and he's accompanied by Steve Mongo McMichael. Now, was this first Steve Mongo McMichael's first time doing announcing or commentating in WCW?
Yep, he was hired to be the WCW commentator.
Okay, but was it specifically for Monday Nitro, or was he doing commentating before this?
No, I believe this was his first commentating gig, period.
Okay, because yeah, they had a pretty, they developed a pretty good dynamic. Now, of course, he was going all over the place, doing his commentating, and sometimes it was funny because I was looking at Eric Bischoff's, like, his facials every time Mongo would say something. He would be really like, what the fuck this guy's talking about? But
right.
but they developed a good chemistry over time. And of course, then Bobby Heenan comes in. And so they made it a three-man announce team, which was something kind of new back then, right? There really weren't that many three-man commentating teams at that time.
No, there wasn't. I kind of enjoyed the three-man commentary in WCW.
Yep. So then we go immediately to our first match. Now, of course, this first episode, or the first couple of episodes of WCW Monday Nitro, were actually 1 hour long. And so this episode only featured 3 matches, but the very first match here was what's his name? Jushin Thunder Liger.
Jushin Thunder Liger. He's one of the greatest Japanese wrestlers. Actually, he was fighting in Ring of Honor last Wednesday.
Wow, he must be, but he has to be like way above 50, right?
Yeah, he's got to be like 60. That's the same guy. I mean, it's under a mask. You can't really tell who's wrestling under there.
But how was the guy? Was he moving around? I mean,
yeah,
how does he look?
He looks just like him right now. He was doing flips off the top rope and everything.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's going up against Flying Brian Pillman. Now, this was, of course, post the Hollywood Blondes. Of course, we all know Brian Pillman was a tag team partner with Stunning Steve Austin when he was in WCW. They were part of the Hollywood Blondes, one of my favorite tag teams of all time. And
yeah, I liked them as a tag team also. They were great.
So this match starts off. Now, of course, this is a match that you would imagine, or you kind of know these guys are going to be flying all over the places, having a lot of high spots, a lot of jumping around the ring. And I thought this was a real hot match to start WCW Monday Nitro and to start the whole series out.
Well, they've had a good repertoire between each other. They both fought before, and back in '92, they fought together against each other for the first WCW Light Heavyweight Championship with Brian Pillman won.
Okay. Now this was this Monday Nitro was a couple of weeks before Fall Brawl from 1996, and
95.
From what? 1995. Yeah, I'm sorry, 1995. Fall Brawl 1995. That's right. We're in 1995 because we're in WCW Flashback City.
Bitch. We're going to have to start a trend on Twitter with the Flashback City, bitch.
Flashback City, that's right. We got to get that on Twitter. Oh, that was a horrible. I don't know if you noticed, Brian Pillman tried to do a Hurricanrana on Jushin Thunder Liger, and he almost twisted his body, almost broke himself in half. So that kind of looked kind of weird there.
I miss watching. Now that I'm watching this episode, I miss how good Nitro was.
It was.
They had a stacked roster. They had a bunch of old guys, but they had a bunch of new guys also.
Yeah, and the thing is, I like it was like they started this format, and of course you can see it here right from the very first episode where the first match was always hot, would always get the crowd into it. It was always cruiserweights or these type of matches where you get the crowd real excited for these type of matches.
Yeah, WCW was really good at opening their shows with cruiserweight matches that always just lit up the arena to begin the show with.
Yep. Now, as we're watching this, I'm going to fuck up his name all the time because my pronunciation of his name. Liger. Let's just call him Liger, yeah, for my benefit. Let's just call him Liger. Now, he's doing like kind of like this plancha. I don't know how to explain it. The Brian Pillman is facing down on the mat, and he starts grabbing his legs and his arms, and he does like a little surfboard, and he puts them on You know, he raises him up. Now this was something really wasn't seen a lot, at least not in WWF television at that time.
Oh, WWF always their guys always had been huge. They always wanted big, huge guys. They never had young, talent that was in the 165, 180 pound range.
These guys are flying all over the spot here, and Liger, of course, he goes on the apron, throws himself on top of Brian Pillman, and it's just amazing to see the crowd. The crowd was very hot. Everybody was still standing. There was nobody sitting down at this point in the match, and the show had been, well over 6 or 7 minutes already had started. People were still standing around ringside. For there was just so excited for this match.
Yeah, and the crowd is really alive, and I'm surprised how many people are there.
Yeah, well, of course, you would expect a lot of people being there. I mean, it is the Mall of America, but it's not just the amount of people. It's the amount of people just standing and sitting around, actually watching the whole wrestling show.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm surprised that it looks like if it was an arena, it's a full sold-out arena.
Yep. And of course, the referee for this match is, of course, my favorite referee. If you guys have heard this show before, you've heard me rant about Nick Patrick. So he's the referee for this match.
He's a fair referee.
Yeah, he was fair. He was just part of all, at least all these messed up finishes in WCW history is like he's always in them for some reason.
Yeah, he's the king of fuck ups when it comes to being a referee.
I like the dynamic that Mongo McMichael developed with Eric Bischoff and Bobby the Brain Heenan immediately right out the bat at this first show.
Yeah, I like when Mongo McMichael would come out with Little Peppy. Remember his little child Peppy?
Yep.
I think all of the first year he came out with Peppy.
On every show?
Yeah.
Huh.
Different outfits every show.
That's interesting. What's the outfit Pepe has here? Because I know he got like a little Mexican sombrero on or something like that, right?
Yeah, I believe it was a sombrero. He likes Taco Bell.
Remember that little chihuahua from the Taco Bell commercials? Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite commercials back at that time.
Yeah, back in the 90s, that was a good commercial.
He would come out with a little merengue. You see the little dog walking around. It was just hilarious. Taco Bell commercials. That's a whole other show for another day. 1990 commercials.
No shit. We're going back and forth with pinfalls here.
Yeah, this is a real good match. They've had a couple of high spots there. I remember Brian Pillman did at one point a superplex from the third rope. Jushin Thunder Liger just hit a Hurricanrana from the third rope. And he's going for the pin. He only gets a 2 count there.
Who came up with that name, the Hurricanrana?
I don't know. Ever since I've watched wrestling these days, and I've always, of course, when I was a kid, I know that move was called the Frankensteiner, and I've heard Scott Steiner in a couple of interviews. You never call that shit a Hurricanrana in front of. He'll probably fucking kick your ass. He's always said that's a Frankensteiner.
Everybody that I know, including Jim Ross, calls it a Frankensteiner. The only asshole that I ever heard call it a Hurricanrana was Mike Tenay.
Well, because it's a name, of course, from Lucha Libre. They always say, "Oh, that comes from Lucha Libre." And for you people who've never listened to the Cheech and Kern wrestling podcast, I suggest you go back and check out our shows, because in one of those shows, I can't remember which episode it was, Kern goes on a little rant talking about Lucha Libre. So you guys need to go back and check that out. We're not going to get into it here. But of course, that term comes from the Lucha Libre style. And Mike Tenay, Joey Styles, I remember in ECW would call it a Hurricanrana. And now everybody calls it. Matt Striker, he seems to be one of these wrestling historians that calls it a Hurricanrana. Hurricanrana, like he says, Lucha Underground. And as we're talking about that, Brian Pillman just pinned Jushin Thunder Liger for the 1-2-3 count.
Put a roll up for the 1-2-3.
Now, one of the things that I enjoyed about WCW as I watched this is right after the match, they will always give like replays of the highlights of the match. And I enjoyed it because Bobby the Brain Heenan was the one. He would be like, "Oh, here you see the move here and this and that." And of course, Bobby Heenan never called the moves by their names. He just said, "That's a beautiful maneuver," and he pinned them for the 1-2-3. And it's just great.
Yeah, I love Bobby Heenan.
Speaking of Bobby Heenan, I just recently saw a picture of him online that was
Oh
posted,
God.
and
Yeah.
his jaw. I mean, of course, for for the benefit of the people that don't know, Bobby the Brain Heenan has been suffering from, I think it's throat cancer for the last couple of years, and he's been battling very hard. And I recently saw a picture of him online, and it's just it looks sad. A guy uh, that you grew up as a child watching, and then all of a sudden see him in that state is kind of sad.
Oh, he seems to be fine with it. I mean, he's out there taking pictures with everybody. He's thumbing up everybody. He's going to all the Comic Cons and he's signing all autographs. He's out to all the Legends, conventions. He's everywhere. He doesn't mind. He likes it.
Yeah. Now, of course, after this first match, we go immediately. So now we're watching this on the WWE Network. Of course, we're not gonna have any of the 1995 ads, but of course, we have here immediately. They go. Eric Bischoff is talking about Hulk Hogan, and they had just opened recently the Pasta Mania in the Mall of America. Now, this was something. If you go online and you search Pasta Mania, you can see old pictures of Pasta Mania restaurant when it closed down, because I think it was not a big success. Pasta Mania. They even show some of the old signs and stuff when they threw them out and they closed the Pasta Mania restaurant.
Yeah, Pastamania didn't make so much money. I mean, what the hell was Hulk Hogan thinking?
It's one of those things, like when you notice Hulk Hogan was one of those guys that would put his name on anything, and this was just one of them. At one point when
He would put his name on it.
exactly now, and when you think about he's thinking about, oh yeah, I ate my pasta and I'm slim and fit. I'm like, anybody eating pasta is not going to be slim and fit. That's one thing.
No, they're gonna be fat and.
I'm not I'm not the skinniest or slenderest type of guy, but I know pasta gives you a lot of carbs, and that's just gonna mess up your diet real quick. So, yeah, but he was giving his name out to anything. And you know what the funny part is? I used to be a huge fan from Hogan Knows Best. I don't know if you ever watched that reality episode show he used to do, but he was actually offered. The George Foreman grill is one of the best-selling grills out there right now, and it's been like that for the last, I don't know, 15 years or whatever, or whatever long it's been. And he was actually offered the George Foreman grill or something else, and he ended up picking the other thing. And of course, we all know George Foreman has made millions of dollars with the George Foreman grill.
Man, no shit. Here we got Sting coming up against Ric Flair.
Isn't it ironic? Now, of course, we're jumping up ahead here, but the very first episode of Monday Nitro, Sting fights Flair. And of course, we all know on 2001 when Nitro came to an end, Sting and Flair also fought.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, this was the Ric Flair that he was not quite the Ric Flair you knew from the 80s, but he still had his swag going on. Of course, he had cut his hair, but he was still styling and profiling at this time.
Oh, Ric Flair's always been the man to me.
Now, you got to give me a little bit of a background here, Kern. Of course, for you people, for the first time listening to the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, Kern seems to be our WCW historian here. So he's going to give us a little bit of a background on what was going on at this point, at this time period with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen.
Well, this is actually Sting. He's the U.S. champion at this time, and he's defending the title against Ric Flair. For give a little background on it, Sting and Ric Flair have had a feud that's been going on since 1988. And Ric Flair always asks Sting for help, and Sting always, denies him help. And in the future episodes that we'll be watching, we're going to see why Ric Flair and Sting are fighting tonight.
Okay.
And look, Lex Luger just made an appearance. What's going on? I'm surprised.
Yeah, this was the very first. This was, I guess, was the first shot fired by WCW.
Flashback City, bitch.
That's right. This was the first shot fired. Of course, when Lex Luger came out of nowhere and appeared on WCW Monday Nitro. Now, of course, I believe he had just wrestled the night before on a WWE live event, or was it a pay-per-view? I'm not even sure if it was a pay-per-view or a live. I know he wrestled the night before.
I think it was a pay-per-view. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was.
And nobody expected this. Nobody knew it at the time. It was really quiet. He comes out on the screen, and was it Mongo McMichael or is it Eric Bischoff saying, but what's he doing there? Get him out of the camera.
And Bobby Heenan's like, well, this is a mall. Maybe he's shopping.
Yeah, and now, of course Bobby Heenan used to be so quick on his feet. You know, he would always come up with these smart remarks. Now, but he does have a point. I mean, it is the Mall of America. It's a public mall, you know. So Lex Luger was just there. He just appeared.
Well, this is awesome to be sitting there at this mall right now watching a free match between Ric Flair and Sting.
Ric Flair and Sting, both of those men. I guess Flair was a little bit he wasn't in his prime at this point, but he was still pretty up there. You know, he had to be 95% or more of Ric Flair.
Yeah, he still go. He still won. He still go. And he still got another three more world titles to win.
Exactly. And I'm saying now Sting, you could say he was right in his prime at this point. Would you say that, Kern?
Yeah, I would say that. This is just pretty much about where, prime of his life.
Because everybody, of course, when you talk about Sting and you talk about WCW, everybody kind of reminisces and goes back and talk about the Crow character. But I think the Crow character was actually in a point where it was kind of like his crossroads in his career, so to speak. But
yeah, I think he was just trying to change his character a little bit, get some more momentum. Man, probably got sell a lot more merchandise too.
That's right. But I think this is the Sting that really brought him to the dance. Was this surfer Sting? With his blonde, bleached, spiked hair and his face paint and his bright colors. Right now he's dressed in bright purple. Right there. Now you got to tell me something about Ric Flair. Why was Ric Flair dressing in yellow, red and yellow? Because I know when Hogan came in '94, the first match Hogan wrestled was in a pay-per-view. Right. I think it was Bash at the Beach. With
Bash at the Beach '94, Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan with Shaquille O'Neal as the special guest enforcer.
And I think Mr. T even made a little cameo on that event, right?
Yeah, he accompanied Hogan down to the ring.
And that was for the WCW World Heavyweight title. And I remember Hogan caught, he captured the WCW title at that night. But then after that, Ric Flair did they align or something at one point? Because I remember at one point they even mentioned like, oh, this is Hogan's influence on Sting, on Ric Flair. He's wearing the red and yellow.
No, I think that was just Bobby Heenan beat Bobby Heenan because I believe he's the one that said it.
He's the one that said it. That's
right.
But
no, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair feuded from '94. Jesus Christ. So just to pretty much this till the end, like when Nitro started.
Okay.
They feuded for like almost a year and a half. I mean, it was ridiculous. Every pay-per-view was Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan in some ridiculous match, a cage match, no disqualification match, a street fight, a retirement match where Ric Flair lost, but yet the next pay-per-view he's back fighting fucking Hulk Hogan again. Well, I thought he had a retirement match and he lost. Why is he back?
That's right. As we're talking here, these two guys are. As we're talking about, these two guys have a hell of a match going on. I mean, Ric Flair just did a crossbody on Sting, and both men just went over the top rope to the outside.
I like Sting. He looked good as a wrestler here.
Yeah.
He had it all. He had charisma. He can talk. He can wrestle. He had the look.
Yeah.
Man, that's almost 60 years old and he's in WWE.
Yep, and I think he looked pretty good at WrestleMania. When he fought Triple H, he actually he looked pretty good. He was able to hang there. Of course, they did a lot of interfering and stuff, but the match, I think he did pretty good for himself.
Yeah, I enjoyed that match. I enjoyed that match a lot. I think it was worth. It belonged in WrestleMania. It was a really good match. This is one thing that kills me when they go to commercial during the match.
I remember when I was a kid, I would start watching the local wrestling shows from here. Like Hugo Savinovich would be talking, and I remember when they used to go on commercials right in the middle of the match. I'm like, well, why do they go to commercials? I've never seen in the States wrestling events go to commercials, and then Mondays WCW Monday Nitro started, and Monday Night Raw, and they started going to commercials right in the middle of matches. Like maybe this is something that they've done every time, but I really noticed it first when I was a kid here in the local independent wrestling shows here.
Here comes Arn Anderson. I loved Arn Anderson. I thought he was very underrated.
Yeah, the enforcer Arn Anderson. I mean, he was the I want to say well, maybe we could say he was the workhorse of the Four Horsemen, right? He was the man that, he was the muscle, I mean, his name, the Enforcer, you know.
Right, yeah, he's the one that kicked ass and took names. But I loved Arn Anderson. I think he was great. He never won a world title, which was weird. But he was one of the best wrestlers out there.
Now, isn't it kind of weird that here, Lex Luger, he made his debut here. He kind of came out, but all they did was kind of show him on the screen, and then he kind of just disappeared, right? He went to the back or something because he just kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah, he took off to the back, which was pretty much all you wanted. All you wanted was the wow factor to have him there. I mean, he comes back out at the end to challenge Hulk Hogan for well, we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, all they wanted was the wow factor, which they pretty much got because nobody was watching Raw that night because Raw wasn't on.
That's right. Raw wasn't on.
Fan was tuned in to Nitro that night.
So yeah, when you think about it, one of the best, what should I say, nights to go on was this one because WWF was not airing Monday Night Raw here.
Oh, I'm sure they picked it. I mean, Ted Turner owned WCW and he owned the television company, so he could pretty much do whatever he wanted to. So I'm pretty sure they timed that the way they wanted to, and it came out perfect.
Yep. Now this is.
Did you get ratings on this show?
Huh?
Did you get a ratings? What was the ratings for this show?
Actually, I looked for it online, but I wasn't able to find anything about the ratings in the show. Now this is a classic Sting versus Ric Flair match. These guys are going back and forth, going top rope. Ric Flair does his famous, they throw him to the corner, he flips. Sting does the clothesline. I mean, this was a classic Flair Sting match. Of course, it's not Clash of the Champions 1, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out, you can check it out on the very first episode of the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, where we talk about the NWA Clash of the Champions 1, where it was Ric Flair versus Sting for the NWA World Heavyweight title, and they go to a 45-minute draw on that event.
One of the greatest matches. That's what made Sting a superstar that night.
Exactly. So you guys could go back and check that out.
Ric Flair, the dirtiest player in the game, hitting Sting with a low blow in the knees.
That's right. One of the things I always liked about WCW, the Monday Nitro, from the very first episode was their production value. WCW always had great production on their events. Good lighting and.
Oh man, it was owned by a TV company now. They had all the bells and whistles they needed. Actually, Nitro drew a 2.5 on the ratings that night.
2.5. So we had talked a little bit about the ratings before. It's like for every 1 point, it's like what 1.1 million viewers or something like that you mentioned before.
Yeah, like 1.1 something million viewers equals 1 in the ratings.
So I mean that was good. That was a good rating for the first show.
Yeah, that was what almost 2.5, 3 million people tuned in to watch that night.
Now, of course, the referee for this match was, what's his name? Is it Randy Johnson? No, it's not Randy Johnson.
Randy Anderson.
Randy Anderson. He's one of my favorite WCW referees. I actually remember him being a part of a lot of big matches in WCW history.
Yeah, he was. He was a great referee. He passed away. He had he was 42 when he died. He died of cancer. What do you call it?
Prostate?
Is that what they call it? Booty hole cancer?
I guess, yeah. It's prostate cancer. Wow, that's a shame. I did not know that he had passed away.
Yeah, he passed away a year or two after, like 2003, after WCW closed, a couple years later.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, and you know who else died? The same thing as that? Earthquake.
Mike Tenta? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
He died of butt cancer. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Wow, that's a shame. I didn't know that.
Oh man, you'd be surprised how many wrestlers and referees have died in the last 10 years.
Yep. Now you got to give me a little bit. You talked a little bit about the background here, but this match came to an end as a disqualification because Arn Anderson attacked Ric Flair. Basically, Ric Flair had Sting. There he was in a figure four, right? And then Lex Luger came in, because Ric Flair didn't want to let go of the rope, and they kind of went at it. Ric Flair and Arn Anderson went back and forth at this.
Well, yeah. What was going on there is I'm going to end up giving a little bit of spoiler. Is Ric Flair and Arn Anderson were trying to form the Horsemen again, but they wanted to get rid of the number one nemesis, which was Sting. But back then was Dusty Rhodes, now it was Sting. So Arn Anderson would team up with Brian Pillman to go up against Ric Flair, making Ric Flair having to find an opponent. Now, Ric Flair being the asshole he's been for years, nobody wants to be his opponent, so he was going up to Sting, begging Sting to be his opponent. Sting didn't want to because he says every time I would back you up, you end up screwing me. So Ric Flair begged him, he promised him he wouldn't screw him. So Sting teams up against Flair. Sting teams up with Flair to go against Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman, and then all three of them attack Sting, and once again, Sting is off. Sting was off.
Now that was of course the storyline way, right, to get that done. But was it because they had flipped Arn Anderson? Now at this time specifically, they had flipped Arn Anderson. He was supposed to be the babyface. Was it maybe that it wasn't working, and that's why they ended up doing what they did to Sting, or do you think it was the plan all along?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, the plan worked out. I mean, it came out okay. But I'll be honest with you, the Arn Anderson Ric Flair feud, nobody bought it. I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
You just couldn't. It was, come on, man. These guys been best friends for fucking 15, 20 years wrestling together, and all of a sudden they don't like each other and they want to kill each other and beat each other up. I mean, nobody bought it.
They had fought before. What's the pay-per-view before this? Was it Super Brawl? Where they fought before?
Man, I can't remember. Yeah, but they fought in a couple of pay-per-views actually, and Arn Anderson actually won all those pay-per-view matches.
Huh. Interesting. Now, after this match, of course, we have this guy. What's the name of this guy that came out here interfering?
Big Boss Man?
No. The guy that came on after the Ric Flair Sting match.
Macho Man?
Yeah, Macho Man. But the other guy. What's the name of the other guy that came out that he wanted to fight?
Big Bubba?
No. It was the guy that was Macho Man was inviting him to the ring. And they didn't let him fight. They ended up fighting on the next WCW Monday Nitro.
Oh man, what's his name?
Let me see if I can see it in my notes. Let me see if I can get it in my notes here. Oh wow, I can't believe I forgot his name. I had it written down and everything.
Was it Ken Norton?
No.
Joe Girardi?
No, Joe Girardi. Anyways, as I look it up here, we got they give us a little tease here of Sabu. He's making his way into WCW, and then after that they go and they give us a little tease of none other than IRS, or formerly known as IRS in WWF, and of course he was going here for the name of Mike. What was his name? Mike Wall Street, was it? VK Wall Street was his name. VK Wall Street. Mr. Wall Street was huh?
That's what I said, Wall Street.
Yeah, VK Wall Street. Yeah, but I said Mike. For some reason I said Mike, but it was VK Wall Street. And he came in, of course this was a clear shot that they took at WWF, because he came in with a little jacket, he had a little money sign, and he was like, I come from a place where they say it's the new generation. I like to call it the few generation. I was like, whoa, okay, you taking shots fired. And he said, and I'm pretty sure that the IRS is going to be paying attention to me, but if they come or something, of course they're going to be watching, because this is where the big boys play or something like that. So he came in not giving a fuck about anything. He came in shooting on WWF real quick.
Hey, Eric Bischoff had balls, man. I mean, the shit he had people saying, I mean, he was looking for the attention, and he got it. And now it's the main event, Big Bubba Rogers versus Hulk Hogan, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
Now, how many times did Hogan defend his title? Because I mean, it seemed like he would defend his title a lot, but of course that's not really what happened, because he wouldn't even come on in every pay-per-view, right? Once he made his debut in WCW in '94.
No, he didn't fight. He did for a while. I mean, he comes out. He was wrestling a lot on TV. He would defend his title on Saturday Night Main Events versus the dumbest of people. But yeah, he defended his title. Like I said, once he won it from Ric Flair, he defended it against Ric Flair for like 6 or 7 months of weird matches, and he won every one of them. Which was, I don't know why they kept fighting, and Hulk Hogan's the only one winning.
That's right. He did. He did lose. Ric Flair did lose like every one of those matches, right?
Yeah, he did every one of them. With Big Bubba Rogers versus Hulk Hogan.
Now here they're saying Scott Norton, right? Yeah, because they had just mentioned that the match was signed. It was going to be Macho Man Randy Savage versus Scott Norton on next week's episode of WCW Monday Nitro.
Hulk Hogan always looks so tan. He's losing so much hair right now.
Yeah. Now the thing is, and he looked, because of course you remember Hulk Hogan in the '80s. He was huge. He was Hulk. You know, he was hulky. But here he just kind of looked thin, like long and thin. And then his long hair, because he used to have it. His hair was much longer here, and I don't know. It looked like a completely different Hulk Hogan. He looked like he had lost, I don't know, 30 pounds of muscle when he was in WWF.
Yeah, he looked like a Hulk Hogan in AIDS or something, with AIDS.
Yeah,
he was all skinny and bony, and I think those are hair extensions.
Yeah, right. They do, because I mean his hair wasn't growing that long in in WWF. So yeah.
Right. All of a sudden he's over here with long blonde hair. You know, it's funny. If you're bald, why would you keep long blonde hair?
I guess that was the look. No, and I am.
In '95, '95 wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about it, there's a lot of wrestlers that do that. Kevin Sullivan is one that comes to mind that always had that Hulk Hogan hairdo. I call it the Hulk Hogan hairdo because I think he's the only guy that was at least started that trend.
It looks so weird.
Yeah, you got like no hair at the top and long hair in the.
Letting it grow longer.
Yeah. Now Big Bubba Rogers. Now this is a guy that he like always made like jumps back and forth from WWF to NWA. I mean, this is a guy that wrestled everywhere you can imagine. You know. I mean, he was part of the episode that we did on WCW NWA Starrcade 1986, the Skywalkers. He was part of that event as Big Bubba Rogers. Of course, we all remember he was supposed to catch Jim Cornette. He didn't, and that's when Jim Cornette ended up messing his knees.
Right. Actually, Big Bubba Rogers was a heavyweight champion in the UWF. Remember the UWF?
Vaguely remember the UWF. He was the champ, really, the World Heavyweight Champ?
World Heavyweight Champ in the UWF. Big Bubba Rogers. You know, remember the UWF? It was really good, man. They had Terry Taylor, Eddie Gilbert, Big Bubba Rogers, the Freebirds were there. Terry Gordy, Buddy Rogers, Michael Hayes.
Huh, well, man. I vaguely remember the UWF, but I wonder if WWE owns that videotape so they could put like those old shows on the WWE network.
Well, Jim Crockett is actually the one who bought the UWF.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember, I think it was Starrcade '87. Nikita Koloff fights Terry Taylor for the UWF, the title versus title. The NWA television title versus the UWF television title.
Talking about Starrcade 1987, that's going to be our tribute show for the late, great Dusty Rhodes, which is coming at you sooner rather than later. We're going to do a tribute show on Starrcade 1987. It was Chi-Town Heat. Well, no, it wasn't. Was it Chi-Town Heat, the name of it?
Yeah, Chi-Town Heat.
Chi-Town Heat. We're going to be reviewing that Starrcade 1987 as a tribute to the late, great Dusty Rhodes. Of course, his match there was against the Total Package, Lex Luger, for the United States World Heavyweight title. I think it was in a cage match, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so too. Yeah, that's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, so stay tuned to that. That's coming up pretty soon here on the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast. But not now, because we're talking about WCW Flashback City.
Bitch! And Big Bubba Rogers is taking in the Hulk Hogan here. He's beating him up. He's got Jimmy Hart by the jacket.
Big Bubba Rogers is actually kicking Hulk Hogan's ass right here. But I mean, this is kind of the typical Hulk Hogan match where he would kind of get beat up, he would look himself, have some trouble, and then he always came from the behind. Came from the behind. He always came from behind. He always get his butt whooped.
Big Bubba sitting there getting his ass whooped now by Hulk Hogan.
Yep. Now everywhere it seemed like everywhere Hulk Hogan went, he would take Jimmy Hart with him, right? That was like part of the act, Everywhere he went with Jimmy Hart.
But did Hulk Hogan have Jimmy Hart in the WWF? No, right?
No, actually he didn't. Hulk,
I think this was the first time I seen him with Jimmy Hart. I mean, after this, he's been with him everywhere.
Exactly, but I don't think he had any association whatsoever in because of course, if you remember, Jimmy Hart was always a heel manager in WWF. He always had his heel stables, and then all of a sudden when he comes to WCW, Jimmy Hart comes in and he's like the biggest babyface ever with the Hulk Hogan jackets and his paint and the what's that called, the megaphone and everything, and I was wondering.
He ends up betraying Hulk Hogan because he ends up being a heel manager here too. But it's the way. But yeah, I never remember him being with Hulk Hogan in the WWF.
Now, one thing I liked about this first WCW Nitro, of course, it was only an hour long, but they gave them 3 matches, but all 3 matches were actually really good matches.
Yeah, and they weren't fast. They weren't 2 or 3 minutes. They actually lasted, 6 or 7 minutes.
I mean, that first match with Brian Pillman and Jushin Thunder Liger was a good match. That second match between Sting and Ric Flair, I mean, that was a good match. Of course, it was by far not their best match ever, but that was a good match a solid match for WCW Monday Nitro.
Yeah, and you got to remember, TV back then, when you watch wrestling, you've seen, some superstar against some scrub that just showed up out of left field. This was like the first WCW. Even on WCW Saturday nights, it was a good guy versus a scrub. This was like the first WCW show where it was actually, good guy versus, superstar versus superstar.
Yeah, and they always had like those type of enhanced matches. And where they would have like exactly, you said, a good guy, and then they would have like this jobber, and he was just,
Wade Barrett? We'll get to that in another episode.
Yeah, we'll get to that in another episode, exactly. But, in WCW, definitely changed that because even if you think about it, the Monday Night Raw really had those type of matches at the beginning also,
There it was. Here we go. Hogan with the boot for the 1, 2, 3. He picks up the victory against the
Big Bubba Rogers.
Big Bubba Rogers, that's right. I was going to call him Big Boss Man there for a minute. Nice looking crowd, man.
Yeah, this was a great win for Hulk Hogan. The people are going nuts. Now, did you notice during the match at one point there were 3 guys sitting front row, and they came out and they had Hogan Sucks posters, signs, as you say, and another one was Hogan is what was it? Hogan, I can't remember. It was Hogan Sucks, and Hogan is I can't remember what the other one said. Anyways, they immediately cut to the side view of the ring, and then and they took the signs away from the guys, and you could tell the guys were like pissed. They're like, "What the?" I guess this was like the first time, because of course these shows are live, so this was the first time, because you could tell the guys were like mad, and they were like, "Oh, you could tell like people had said like, you can't bring those signs here or nothing," because they just looked all weird.
It's funny, yeah, because by the time must have been because the first time, because I remember going to Nitro a bunch of times, and I've had my signs, and I've had the most weirdest of stupidest signs, and I had one that said Hogan fears Viagra, Hogan fears cocaine, had I'm with stupid, and you point to the arrow with the idiot sitting next to you.
But when you wrote those, was Hogan a heel? Because here Hogan was a babyface, so I guess they didn't want any Hogan suck signs on the show here.
Right, no, Hogan was a heel. When I started going to Nitro, it was all NWO. Hogan was already part of the NWO.
Okay. Now here we come to the big angle here, finishing off Monday Nitro, where of course the Dungeon of Doom, right? Is it that's their name? The Dungeon of Doom, was it? They came down, they started beating up on Hogan. It was Kevin Sullivan,
Yeah.
Kamala. What was the other guy's name? The one that was yeah,
Zodiac.
yeah, the Zodiac. There you go. Is it that guy? He's had like so many different incarnations throughout his whole career that I don't remember his name. But yeah, he was the Zodiac there, and the Shark.
Shark.
They came down and started beating, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Lex Luger comes down. And he starts beating everybody up. He starts helping Hogan, and then they come back to back. They bump on each other, and they almost lay blows. And Lex Luger starts talking, and Hogan starts talking trash, and then you got Sting coming out. You got Macho Man. Now I was wondering when I was watching, I was like, why the hell is Sting and Macho Man coming down? But it was because they were part of a team. There was Hulk Hogan, Sting, Macho Man, and it was supposed to be Big Van Vader. They were going to go out 4 against the against these guys against the Dungeon of Doom on the upcoming pay-per-view Fall Brawl from 1995.
At the War Games.
Exactly. Now it's weird because I was wondering, like, wait a minute, if he's going to be a 4-on-4, why isn't Van Vader there? But he didn't make his appearance. I don't think Big Van Vader ever came out on WCW Nitro. Am I right or am I wrong there?
Man, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you're right. I think he left the company already. I mean, he wasn't announced for it, but he already had left.
Yeah, because
You're right. He ended up going up in Nitro. I mean, on Raw in '95.
Was it in '95? I think it was early 2000. I think it was early '96. Like maybe the first episode of '96. He ended up coming up on Raw. I may be wrong about that, but I think it,
right after this.
yeah. So then, so they go to commercial with all this being sorted out here. Then they come back. Mean Gene Okerlund, he's in the ring. He's like, we got to sort this out. And then all of a sudden, Hulk Hogan starts talking to Lex Luger, and he starts saying, oh, well, what are you doing here in my backyard? This is my neck of the woods. You're not supposed to be here. And then Lex Luger's like, oh, well, I came over here. I was playing with kids, and I'm trying to play with kids. I'm here where the big boys play. And as far as I'm concerned, you're holding that WCW World Heavyweight title. And that makes you the only legitimate champion in professional wrestling. I mean, talk about shots being fired. Your WWF at this time.
No respect for Vince McMahon.
No respect whatsoever. So they start talking back and forth. Hogan's like, I know where you've been. I know who you fought. I know what you've gone through. You don't have to prove yourself to me. As long as you don't have to wait next month. You don't have to wait next year. I'll give you a WCW title shot, and I'll give it to you right here next week on WCW Monday Nitro.
Hey, they got to geek up the show for next week. So make sure everybody tunes in, because next week Raw will be back on.
Exactly. So they start gibbering back and forth.
Now I'm looking forward to next week now.
Yeah, next week's show. They start plugging that show immediately after that. So what do you think about WCW Monday Nitro, the very first episode, Kern?
I loved it. I mean, they had action-packed first match, then they throw in some quality Ric Flair versus Sting, and then they close out the show with Hulk Hogan as the world champion. I loved the show. I think it was great. It was the beginning of something awesome.
They left a great hook and sinker there between Hogan and Luger. And
Little Pepe's got horns now.
Little Pepe, he's dressed as a little devil, was it? Like, yeah, little horns costume going on there.
And that's the end of the show of Monday Nitro, first episode, WCW Flashback City, bitch.
Flashback City. I enjoyed this very first episode of Monday Nitro, and I think it's going to be a fun series we're going to start doing here. Each and every week, we're going to start reviewing chronologically WCW Monday Nitro. So our next show, of course, is going to be the second episode of WCW Monday Nitro. And then after that, Kern, we got the pay-per-view Fall Brawl from 1995. I mean, when we started talking about this, we're going to take it event by event. WCW all the way. So the next show is going to be the second episode of WCW Monday Nitro. And then after that, we got the pay-per-view WCW Fall Brawl.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's it for the very first edition of the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, WCW Flashback City.
Bitch.
All right, we'll catch you guys next week. Take care.
Peace. got nothing else. It's closing time.